Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And let me show you something that I'm also kind of loosely going to be following, and something that you can reference during homework, and just as a reference for like lecture notes. I'm going to just go. Is that the view? Okay, yeah. So here's another repo. Now this repo, this just really has a couple different folders, and really all it has, if you click on a folder, it just has a README. So there's no code. It's just READMEs for each of these specific topics that we're going to be talking about today and probably tomorrow. So, variables, data types, operators, conditions, etc. They each have their own little README associated with this. Cool. So I'm not going to like directly follow this, but I'll kind of be using this as a guide. And then, this is something you can reference. It kind of is just a place for notes for all of what we're talking about. But let's because what I want to do is go into the code and start just writing some more tests and kind of doing some more exploration. So I'm going to, since we kind of talked about data types yesterday and a little bit about variables, I'm going to start with, I'm now going to move on to like maybe more of like the operators and conditions loop section. So I think we're all familiar. So let's just go into the test. Let's write, maybe just to help keep this a little cleaner. I can come in here in my test folder. I could create a new file. Let's just maybe call this like operators.test.js. Cool. So now I have another file. So if I want to write a test, and I can also just slack this one out. So to write a test, I do this it. This is a jest function. So this function is going to take two arguments. The first one is going to be a string, which is just kind of describing what the test is doing. So I could be like, we're just like testing operators. And then I give it a function. Now we haven't talked about functions, but there's a JavaScript function right there. Just a some parentheses with a equal, and then we call this an arrow, just equal, and then a less than sign, and then two curly brackets. That is.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
So whenever I try to write it in my VS Code, it tries to autocorrect to something else, like it's a different thing every time, and I don't know how to just write it. Like right now, I just corrected to instance of.
Yeah, have you installed any extensions?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, sometimes I don't know. Sometimes you just have to like hit a space and go back and like hit the parentheses.
All right.
We can maybe look at that later, but yeah, sometimes that happens to me, and I just like, yeah, hit a space, go back. So yeah, this is going to be our basic test format right there. So we do our string here, and then like down here, now we can like, write tests. So what I can come now here is I come in here, I go in between the curly brackets, I just hit enter. Boom. So with JavaScript, we have our basic math operators. So we all know what plus is, right? Minus. How do we do times? Well, times is the asterisk. Division is backslash. Does everyone know think maybe these two are like maybe the ones you wouldn't know. That's times, divide. Oh my gosh, divide. How do you spell I don't remember divide. Dude, how do you spell divide?
D-I-V-I-D-E.
Okay. Whew. Add minus. Right. So let's get, these are simple, but like, let's just get some practice writing some tests, because, you know, this is really, we know these, but this can maybe help us. Sometimes doing really simple stuff can help us understand the code or what Jest is doing. So I could expect 1 + 1 dot to be 2. And then I could run my test by doing yarn test. And yeah, if you don't have yarn, it was npm test. Now I have 2 test file. I'm running both of my tests. Maybe I just want to run one test. So I can do that. I can just do yarn test, and then I can give it the name of the file, operators.test.js. And now that's only running one test. It's only running that one file. So that can be nice if you don't want to, like, especially, you know, you might, when you work at a company, maybe you have like thousands of tests and they take like 3 minutes to run and you just want to run one file. So that's one way we can just run that one file. And then I can hit up to go back to that command. So I don't have to type it out every time. Cool. So there's add. Let's do minus expect. 1 minus 1. Expect that to be 0. And let's just write a bad test just to see this fail. Like, we expect -1. If I expect that to be -1, you know, that's not going to break. That's going to fail. Because it expected -1, because that's what I put in there incorrectly, and it received 0. You kind of see how that's telling you, like, this is what it received, was this 1 minus 1, which is 0, but it expected it to be -1 because that's what I said it should be. So let's fix that. Cool, let's do division. What would you expect 3 divided by 2 to be?
One and a half.
Yeah, 1.5. Except if you're coming from another language, you might expect that to be 1. Let's see how JavaScript handles it. Yeah. Let me just show you what I'm going to go. This IRB is going to put me into a Ruby shell. Let me just show you this. If I do in Ruby, if I do 3 divided by 2, it's 1. In Ruby, 3 divided by 2 is 1. Because what Ruby's doing, it's doing integer division. Ruby makes the distinction between integers and decimals. So I could do, if I wanted to actually have it be, you know, give me a decimal, I would need to make one of those a decimal. And then it would say, hey, that's 1.5. JavaScript doesn't do that. But it's just something to keep in mind when we do get to, or when you do get to different languages, they can kind of handle this differently. Then we have times. We would expect that to be 6. Cool. So I think we all know those. Let's go talk about some less maybe common ones. Does anyone know what the modulus operator is?
I think that one, it performs division and then returns the remainder.
Yes, it gives
What was left over?
Okay. You're gonna see I'm a horrible speller. Remain or whatever. That's close enough. Of division. So yeah, it's kind of it's interesting. Expect 3 mod 2 dot to be. So what would that be? So 2 goes into 3 one time with a remainder of 1. So I would expect that to be 1. What about 3? What about 2 mod 2? Well, 2 goes into 2 one times with no remainder. So we could use this to see if anything's divisible by a certain number. If you do like, if you want to see if a, you know, or you could do like even odd. If you want to see if a number's even or odd, we'll just mod it by 2. If it equals 1, then it's odd. If it equals 0, then it's even. Because any number even number divided by 2 is going to not have a remainder. Any odd number divided by 2 is going to have a remainder of 1. So that's how you could do that. It's actually modulus. I never heard about it until I got to computers, but you actually use it here and there. So it's not like a thing you don't. It's a thing you use here and there. So we have like these plus plus. So let's kind of see what this is. Let's make a variable for this. So I'm going to just make a number. Variable equals 0. And I'm going to do a num plus plus. Does anyone know what that's doing? Adding 1. Cool. I'm not going to do all these. There's the minus minus, that minus is 1. So there's that one. There's also, I can also do it like this. I can say num plus equals like 10. This would add 10 to number. It's just a shorthand. I could also say number. I could say num equals, it's just a shorthand because I could say num equals num plus 10. What would I expect num to be right here?
$11.
11. Yeah, because I declare it's 0 here. We add 1. Expect it to be 1. So now we're taking 11 plus, or 1 plus 10. That's 11. Now we can do it again. And now here I would expect that to be 21. Cool. So once again, yeah, I'm not going to go into all of these just because there's a lot of them, and I can they're kind of the same. So there's a plus equal. There's more. There's a minus equal. There's a times equal. There's a, is there a divide equal? Yeah, divide equal. So there's all of those ones. So you can take a number and have it times equal to a number, divide equal. So those are some operators. Those are the ones I think we're familiar with. Some math operators, right? The modules might be a little new, but nothing crazy here. Let's talk about some other operators that are logic operators.
I'm sorry, real quick question. What's the command that you use in the terminal to run the tests again?
It's yarn test. And then I can give it, on this other one, I'm giving it a specific file name if I just want to run one file.
Okay. Because I've been trying to do it and it has been failing. I was wondering why.
It's been, well, yeah, let's look at it. Let's see why it's failing.
Well, I was putting it in with bad syntax, I think.
Well, yeah, share your screen. Let's see what where if the error is with the command you're typing or if it's somewhere in your code.
So, well, it just hasn't been running the tests. So this, I've been trying all sorts of different things. I was trying that, which this is, I put in yarn test and then hit the tab and it autocorrected to tests.
Okay, so let's just hit Control C. So do yarn test, and then space, and then yeah, do your operators.test.js.
Just like that.
Yep.
Okay, so that failed, but that should just be something that I did wrong up here,
Yeah,
right?
but let's so yeah, but let's look at this error. Like read, so it's saying your test suite must contain at least one test. But you look at your file that has a test, right? That looks to be like the correct syntax.
I just saved it. I
you
don't think I
forgot-
had done that before.
You forgot to save it.
There we go.
There you go.
All right, all's well.
So that's when you can, like, when you start to read those errors, it's like, yeah, you're expected to have one test, but it's like, man, I do have a test in there. So then you can look for syntax errors. You don't see any. And then it's like, then you just like really looking at it. And then, yeah, you might glimpse that circle in VS Code and see that. Cool. All right. Yeah, let's talk about logic operators. Do we know what, does anyone know what these are?
I believe they're the and or not with the
Yeah.
symbols.
And or let's do a dash. So we have and, which is represented. I'm going to do these in parentheses. Just we have the or, which is two pipes, and then we have the not. You take these three operators and you take 0 and 1, and you have enough to build a computer, your Mac computer. That's all you need. There's like, yeah, so that's it's crazy, right? Those are you need two numbers and you need three operators, and you can build a computer. You can start building circuits and all sorts of stuff. But you know these very, very well, right? I don't even need to explain these to you, because if I say like, but where these but they're not easy. They're they're not easy to do. Because I think we kind of just we just kind of do them naturally. But if I were to say like, you know, my name is James and I'm 300 years old, would you believe that statement? No, because I'm not. For an and, both things have to be true. If I say I'm James or I'm 300 years old, that's true. Or if I say like I'm not James, well, that's false. So you know these, but these can get confusing. And it can sometimes be hard to take that logic like from the real world and code it. So let's kind of talk about this. But yeah, let's see here. Let's just test. So let's do an expect. Let's just do some basic stuff. Let's do true and true. I expect that to be true, right? True and true is true. True and false, I'd expect that to be false. crazy there. I could do my or. I'd expect that to be true. Because true or false, that's going to be true. I could expect, not. So how we do a not is we just do a bang, not false. I'd expect that to be true. But these can get big. What if I did something like this? Expect false. And we can like come in here and we can do like a true. So these ones I can actually use parentheses like I do in math to evaluate what's in the parentheses first. And I can just build these out. Let's have this and not false, or and then do another one, true. So these can get really, there's like math classes. I took a math class and it was like doing these crazy expressions. Stupid, but so we can combine these, but these are going to evaluate to just either true or false. Does anyone know what this is going to be? I know this is going to be false, or I'm like, nah, if it's not false, I'm going to be scared. How do I know that's going to be false? And this is actually what a computer does. And we'll actually use this trick to kind of do some tricks. The computer's actually going to see this false and this whole expression right here, the stuff in the yellow parentheses. And the computer is going to go like, I don't even care what that is. This is always going to be false. So the computer doesn't even evaluate this. It just stops and say, oh, this is going to be false. Likewise, I could do this with a true. Once again, the computer sees this true or expression. This is always going to be true because of this first thing. So this doesn't even matter. And when we get to React, we're going to use these concepts of like this false, like true, like this concept to do stuff. If this was true, then the computer has to go in and evaluate this. And I don't know if this would be true. That would be true probably because it's a true or. So I think this should fail now. But anyway. So those are our operators. And, we'll get into some more like kind of, maybe. Well, let me see. We'll maybe get into some more like when we get into loops, we'll kind of maybe look a little more into these, and if statements, but that's our operators. Questions with that? Cool. Let's move on to conditions. So now that and it's good that we've talked about like these, especially these logic ones, but let's now talk about conditions, because now we're kind of actually starting to get into some nice code stuff. So I'm going to do a conditions.test.js. Okay, so let's do another test, it, and then I do my string, like just testing conditions. This is going to be a weird one. These are kind of weird tests to be writing, but we'll kind of see how we can do this. So once again, with the Booleans and like the logic operators, this is stuff you know so well. Like this is our if statements. The if else statements. And if else. If we also have like the if else statements. And you know, like I said, like this is stuff kindergartners know, or like, you know, 3-year-olds know. It's very, very simple, except when we try to code it, it becomes what we do so naturally. When we actually try to put it into code, it becomes challenging. But you yourself, you know these, right? Like you could be like, if you live in Utah, raise your hand, right? Else, you know, raise your foot. You know, I don't know. Like you know these. So but they can kind of get a little kind of you just have to be super, super literal with these. That's, I think, the challenge. So let's do like some if statements. I'm trying to think how we could test these. So let's do a variable. Let's just say let number equal 1. And then I'm going to have like a is odd. I'm going to set that to, I'm not even going to set that. I'm just going to have a variable called is odd. Let's just do a little test right here. Like I expect num right here. What would I expect num to be?
One.
1. Yes, nothing hard there. At this point, what do I expect is odd to be?
True.
True? We can test it out. You said true?
Oh, yeah. I guess there's not.
Bit
Would
easier.
it be undefined?
Yeah, let's try
Yeah.
undefined. Undefined. Oh, I ran my other test. So now I have a new test file. So I actually need to type the file name conditions.js. What doesn't it like? Oh, I forgot to do test.js. Yeah, so is odd is undefined. Let's do one other test. Let's see if this is null, because this is another value in JavaScript. We have these are 2 types. We have the undefined type and we have the null type. They kind of sound like they're the same thing, right? But they're not. Yeah, this is our variable is odd is undefined. It's not null. I expect it not to be. So it's a weird distinction. Well, it's not weird, but it's a subtle distinction. I am declaring a variable right here. A variable, but I am not assigning, that's the word, assigning it a value. Here I am with this one here, I would say I'm declaring a variable num. I am assigning it a value 1. So this actually is undefined is a value. What if I did something like expect, I'm just going to come up with something right here like is even. What do I expect is even to be? Any ideas here?
Undefined.
That one should be null, right?
Let's test it out. This is actually an error. It's funny because the error I get is even is not defined. This is not defined. Let me actually go to just a normal, not because this is actually hand catching this error. Let me just go to a normal JavaScript file, and you don't have to do this, but just watch. So let me do like is odd. And I'm also just going to do a console.log. Program running. Now this is like really important to kind of understand what's going on here. So when I have a program running, what it like in a high level way, you can kind of think of your code running from top to bottom, and it's just going line by line. So we do one line, like step one. And then we could do down here, step 2. So I'm just going to run this yarn index. I don't want to do the test. I just want to run the index. Oh, this one I need to, if I want to run this, I need to give it the path. So I need to go to because my index is in my source folder, and there it is. Why can't it find that? Yarn. Oh, sorry, I need to do a node, the node. So notice how this is program running step 1. I define a variable is odd. I don't assign it. I don't really do anything to it. This is kind of like a pointless operation, but I do get to this second line. It's very important that I'm getting there. What happens if I get rid of this is odd? Oh, sorry, this let, and I just have this is odd. Notice how we log this program running step 1. So this works. We actually get here. And then we get to this line 12, and JavaScript gets to this piece of code, and it's like, dude, what the hell is odd? I don't know what this is. This is not like a JavaScript word. So JavaScript just breaks, and it throws an error, and your code stops right here. We don't see this second log. So our code is done right here, and it exits. So that's the difference. So if I go back to my test, to my conditions, is even is not even null. Is even is something that JavaScript doesn't, it's not defined, which is going to cause an error. If something is not defined, your code's going to stop and it blow up. Jest is handling this error. You can handle errors and have it not blow up and not crash, but we can't really, we can expect this to be like an error. So I'm not even gonna test that. So it's weird because like it's not defined, but not defined. Undefined is a actual value that is undefined. It's a weird term. And null is I could say, hey, like I have some var, I could set that equal to null. And then I could expect this sum bar to be null. So, little difference there, but these are going to come. It's good we're talking about these because we're getting into conditions, because we're going to kind of see these pop up in conditions. But let's go run some tests now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an if statement. And let's say I'm going to check to see if this number is divisible by 2. Let's do an if else. So if my num which I'm declaring right here, is one mod 2. What I'm going to say is odd is going to be set that equal to the string. Let's just set that equal to true. Actually, let's do this. Yeah, sure, let's do it. And then let's do expect is odd. So here's my number. My number's 1, right? I expect is odd to be what? True? Does that make sense? What I'm doing is I have my number here. I mean, I could just, if that's confusing, I could just throw in 1 right there, but let's just use this variable. So I'm going to take this variable, I'm going to mod it by 2. Let's run this test and see what happens. And it fails. Expected true, received false. So first of all, let's step away from the code. Is 1 even or odd?
It is
Odd.
odd.
It's odd. So I'm kind of like, when I look at this test, because I have a number that's equal to 1, and you know, if it's odd, I'm expecting this to be true, right? Because 1 is odd.
You have your things flipped. You said that if it does equal 0, then is odd is true, when it should be the else situation is true and the does equal 0 is false.
Yes, exactly. I have, this is a, so when I went to the other file and showed you a crash, like a reference error, an undefined error, that's an error that causes your code to break. This is a worse kind of error. This is like a logic error. Like you could call this a user error. It's like, I wrote something bad. It's like JavaScript doesn't care. Like this is, we could also call this like a semantic error. So to JavaScript, this code is fine. JavaScript, this is valid JavaScript. But the error here is I got the logic reversed. And these are the errors that are really hard to find. These are the errors that really cause damage because they don't break it. Like errors that break stuff are good because they're usually easy to find. This one could like hide in, you know, somewhere in the depths and then pop up later. And then you're like, what? So yeah, this one, I just have my logic reverse. So I could switch these around or I could do this. What do you think this does? Putting the bang in front of that.
Not equal.
Yeah. And remember, I should also probably be doing 3. So I could do triple equal, but if I do a bang instead, that's just gonna negate it. Oh, I didn't save it. Cool. So there we go. And now that's working. But if I switch number to 2, you know, then I would expect that to be, you know, false or true. I'd expect it to be false. But that's our if else statement. Let's maybe for this one, let's do another test. Let's do an if else statement. Let's do like a can, you know, drink. So let's have 2 people. Let's have Tony, age, you know, 21, and Sally, age is 41 and Bob age is 11. And then we'll do like, let's do, is Toby legal? I don't know why I'm doing, let's make this snake case. So I'm going to, so I also need to declare these. I'm going to say let, because these are variables. So I need to use that keyword let to define them and then assign them. Here, I'm just going to assign some variables, or I'm just going to declare some variables. So we'll have, is Toby legal? Is Sally legal? And is Bob legal? Now, I'm not trying to be like confusing, like we know like this should be true.
Do you mean Tony and not Toby?
Yes, Tony. Thank you. That should be true. This should be true. And this should be false. So let's just do another if statement. So I could do like an if, let's try this one. If Tony.age is greater than, let's write a little function right here. Let's do a little function. So because we're going to start getting into functions too. So let's just do a little function. Right? Because I think I want to have a function. So a function is just going to be a, it's kind of like a mini program. So what I want this function to do is I want this function to tell me if someone can drink. Like this function should return true if person is 21 and over. So there's a couple different ways to write functions in JavaScript, but let's just do it this way. I'm going to do a const. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to be something that I've kind of haven't really talked about. When I'm declaring variables, there's many, like I can call them anything really, but I want to use meaningful names for me as the developer. Because I could declare a variable and called it E. Then I'd be like, well, what is E? But when I read Tony age, it's like, oh, that must be the age of Tony. Likewise with this function is the name is descriptive, can drink. So here's how I write a function. I declare a variable and then I set it equal to my function. Now I want this function to work for multiple people. And what we can do with that is this can take like a person. Once again, this is what's called a parameter. Notice how it's saying parameter. I'm expecting this person, really what I'm expecting it to be is an age. So I'm expecting this to be a number. And so now I can do my if statement. So if person age is greater than 21, return true, because that means they can drink. If that is not the case, I'm going to do an else. I'm going to return false. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of look at what I did with like this even odd one. I'm taking kind of like this logic, because this is kind of a not really it's kind of not useful, because if I wanted to see if another number was odd or even, I'd have to like write a whole nother if else statement. Like let's say I had a number 1. I wanted to see if number 1 was odd or even. So what I can do is I'm going to abstract that logic into a function that can just take any number and see if it's over 21. So this is our function definition.
For this example, shouldn't the age be over 20? Or does that automatically include like greater than or equal to?
No, I had that there on purpose, and damn you. Yeah. Yes. So this is, yeah, one of those. And let me just show this, because yeah, that is an error. And because this should be I should either switch this to be 20, or I should switch this to be greater and equal to. I would say this is the better way to do it. It's a little more nitpicky, but it's a little more readable. Because when I think if someone can go to a bar, I don't think, are they over 20? I think, are they 21 or older? So it's just a little, they both would do the exact same thing though. That is the exact same as this. So I could check to see if it's greater or equal to 21. But I'm going to ignore that for now, and let's just see the error, or see the bad result. Okay, so now I can now say this is Tony legal. I can set that equal to can drink. So here I'm going to call function. Let me just say here I define the function. All right, think of this. This is like the blueprint. And this is where I'm like using it. And I can call it multiple times, because I want to call this multiple times, because I want to, see is Sally legal, and I want to see is Bob legal. But what do you think these functions, what's this missing on these 3 when I'm calling it? Don't I need to somehow pass the actual age of the person? So that's what I do. I can use these variables. I could just pass a number right here, but let's pass the variables. So now for this one, can drink, I pass it Tony's age. For Sally, I'll pass her age, and Bob, pass it that age. Okay. So let's expect is Tony legal dot to be. What am I expecting that to be?
True.
True. Actually, I'm going to do this as well. I'm going to remove these returns just to have this totally broken. And then I would expect, is Sally legal? Sally is 41. I expect that to be true. And then Bob is 11. So I'd expect Bob to be false. So I have these 3 tests. I'm going to run this. So with how I do these tests, if it fails one test, it's going to stop. It doesn't run the other tests. So what this is telling me, hey, one of your expects didn't work or it failed. So it just stops right here. So I expected this to be true and I received undefined. Okay, So why I'm doing this? I want to show like functions return values. That is their functions do two things. They they do stuff and they return values. I mean, they can only return one thing in return. Let me say it this way, return one value. If you don't tell a function what to return, it will return undefined. Okay. So that's what's happening. This I'm calling this can drink function. It actually goes in and it does the work. So let's see if I can actually do this. You don't need to do this. I'm just going to see if I can launch, if I can actually hit this debugger. How do I get this? Oh, debug console. I can't find the terminal. There's a terminal. Oh, okay. Let's see if I can run this. Okay, so what I'm actually doing, and I don't want you to worry about this now, because it'll be a little much, but what I can do is I ran my test, and what I did is I put a breakpoint in here. I just want to kind of show what's going on. So this is nice because I can stop my code and I can pause it and we can kind of look at and see what's going on. So you don't need to do this. I just want you to watch. So what happened is I ran my, I'm running this code. It got right here to line 50. It called this function. And now it's paused right here. It's like actually calling the function. So I can now, oh, stupid Zoom things get, oh my gosh. Sorry, this Zoom thing's in the way. I can now step into this. I can like kind of explore what's going on. That just failed. So notice how it like went in here and now it's on the next line. So let's step into that. Cool. So that takes me to this function call. And now my person age is 41 because I was on Sally this time. And Sally's 41. So person age is now 41. So I can step. So is 41 greater than 21? Yep. So there it's true. Why is it going to the false? And so, but these are still just returning undefined. So that one's less than, so that goes to false. And then we hit this one, and now we're finally to this expect. So it's, see, this is just showing how it's running line by line. And I run this one, and then it blows up, and then it fails. Cool. So with these functions, what I need to do is if I want these to return a value, I need to use the return keyword. So now this function will, when it says return will say, hey, you know, return this value and quit. Function couple. Whenever it hits a return, it just stops the function. So if I run this now, oh, I don't want to be in my debugger. So when I run this now, I do get a failure. But notice this time it's now I'm expected true, but I'm receiving false. So this time it is returning false. And yeah, this is what John was saying. Well, this one's returning false because Tony age is 21. And I had the missing just that one equal sign. Now see, this can be, I want to show this because this can be a bug that might be an edge case, right? If I had, Tony age was 22 and I still had that bug there and I ran my test and it passes. See, this is how those bugs can like kind of creep in. Because you can write all these tests and you think it can work. But then there's that one case where like this is going to work for every number except 21. So that's where you can run into what's called an edge case, right? Your code's working, it's syntactically correct, but then you hit that one off and then boom, your app breaks. And this could be this could maybe be bad, depending on what it is. Maybe, I mean, this is just going to make you have an unhappy customer because someone's going to be 21 and you're going to say, hey, you can't come in because you're not old enough. They're going to be like, what? And then they won't want to go to your website or to your establishment. So this is where this gets hard. What time is it? Let me kind of just, I want to talk about this and then we'll take a break and then we'll come back to it. Just going back to functions. So I think people, when you first learn about functions, you can get a little confused. I think they can be confusing, but let's think about, and don't think about coding, just think about like you're in fourth grade, you have a fourth grade knowledge of math, and we're doing 1 + 1. Right? Let's not make this, just go to like a fourth grade level. This plus sign is a function, right? What does a plus sign do? What do I need to give a plus sign?
Operands.
What?
So you need to give them, I don't know, operands, I don't know.
Yeah, operands, numbers. Yeah, I need to give it 2 numbers, right?
Right.
And then when you think about this, like as I was kind of alluding to yesterday, like when you see 1 + 1, what do you think? You think 2.
2.
Right? 2. What about if you see like 1 + nothing? If you're given like, you'd be like, what? Right? That's like, you're using this wrong.
Yeah, a calculator would return syntax error if you put that in.
Yeah. A calculator would say syntax error. Like, and you as a fourth grader would just be like, what? What about if I did like 1 +, like, remember how we had that car? Like I just said, hey, I just asked the fourth grader, hey, what's 1 + car? You'd also be like, what? Same thing with 1 + the string 1. But so the plus sign, what I'm trying to get at, the plus sign, it takes 2 numbers. They need to be numbers, right? If they're not numbers, I can't do it. Also, and it's 2 and exactly 2, right? I can't do like a 1 + 1 and then like a 456. That's like, once again, that is like a fourth grader is going to be like, that's wrong. So my plus sign takes 2 numbers, and it returns. What does it return? Returns one number, a sum. Because you can give me 1 plus 3, I can do that. That's 4. You can give me, 4 plus 5. Just give me 2 numbers and I can add them. So that's what we're going to be talking about when we get back, when we talk about functions. And we can even look at this function. Our can drink, this is a function. It expects, it is expecting you give it one thing. So here we're kind of defining, what this function does. It's like us being able to go in and define this plus sign. Like that's why coding's so powerful. We can go in and define these functions. But then when I define it, I'm making some assumptions. I'm assuming that this thing right here that I'm calling person age, once again, I could call this T, it would work. JavaScript doesn't care. I'm just going to be descriptive about what I want what that should, like this is a person's age. You give me a person's age, and if, I'm going to return whether true or false, whether or not they're over 21. And so then when someone uses my function, they better give me an age. They better give me a number. Because if someone comes in and gives me like a string, that is the what? If they don't give me anything, that is like these should probably all be errors. Does that make sense? Cool. So we'll come back. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll write the add function and just go more into functions. Cool. So let's take a break. What time is it? It is 11:40. It's 11:37. Let's come back at 11:50. I'm also going to do a git add and a git commit -m. Code, or so I would be descriptive. I could say like conditions, operators, because that's kind of what we worked on. And then I could do a git push origin master. And now that code should be up on GitHub if you want to look at it. I'm also happy to Slack stuff out if you need it.
Can you Slack it out too?
Yeah. So I will give you, so we did this conditions one. And then the operators one. Cool.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or need anything?
I had one question. I
Go ahead.
noticed that when you were declaring your function, you declared a variable and then set that variable equal to a function. Is there any advantage of doing that over just declaring the function?
You mean like, have you been using like the function keyword?
Yeah, function, keyword, and then all that good stuff.
For now, we're going to say they're the exact same.
Okay.
There are differences, but
Well, there are differences. I'm just wondering if there's any advantage to one versus the other.
yes.
Okay.
Because there's some differences, and sometimes they're better in different circumstances, but we don't need to know those right now.
Makes sense.
We'll talk more about those when I think like it's easier to see with like examples. It's like I could say like an arrow function binds this to the event, and you just be like, what? So I'm going to do a little bit of both, because yeah, we'll do both of them. Cool. Sweet.
I did actually have a quick question. You mind if I share my screen?
Yeah, go for it.
It's just about GitHub. Is this just here? Is this just my list of everything that I have? And like a list of like everything that's been updated?
Yeah, because when you clone down this project, like this was a project I made like 2 years ago. And you clone down that project. So you clone down all of these files that went along with it. Those were files I added. And you can see some of these files like they were last changed 2 years ago. And then some files were changed 2 minutes ago. Can you see that on the right?
Yes, I do. That's what was confusing me a little bit.
That's just, it becomes a really nice feature of GitHub, because then you can see like what's been changed and what hasn't, and when has it been, when's the last time it was changed.
I guess I was just confused if this was like everything that was on mine or if this was just everything that was only in this repository, but you just answered that's everything in this repository. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you.
Yep. I'm going to hop off for a second just to process these videos.